Hey, hi, good morning, all.
Hey Karthik, good morning. Uh, I was
Good morning.
yeah, we was thinking we can start in another 2 to 3 minutes. Let's wait for a few folks to join.
Sure, let me know when we can.
Yes, I think 8 or 5 we can.
All right, great.
Thanks. So I think we can start. I would not waste any more time. Karthik, go ahead if you want to give a small introduction about yourself and then start.
Okay, great, Vasha.
Thanks,
I
Karthik.
see there is a small batch, which is good. A lot of questions can be asked, right? So, first of all, congratulations, and am I right, Varsha, that all of them are graduating very soon?
So I meant by the previous folks have been graduating. That's why now we have less folks that way. So these guys, I think another month more, or
Okay, all right.
consider a rolling batch. So everybody has their own time to finish the course.
All right. So sooner or later, they are very close to finishing.
Yeah, mostly depending on.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. So I think, yeah, so big applaud for that. You guys have probably crossed a great length of the course and the curriculum designed by Grey Atom and the team, right? So uh, I think this particular session is focused on what do I do now, right? In a nutshell, if I say that okay, I've done this course, I've learned a lot, now it's time that I enter into an organization where I can apply my skills. It's as simple as that. So definitely when you get started there are a lot of questions, and especially if you are new, then you have to identify and kind of figure out how to navigate, right, your path towards where you would like to reach. But before I start, let me try to understand a little bit of all of you. I'm not going to get a quick introduction or something. If you could just tell me, in terms of experience, how many years have you spent in industry before you have started, let's say, learning something new, and now probably you're looking at a career transition as well. Just a number, 1 year, 2 year, how many years of experience you have? Okay, there are some pressures. 6 years, Nikhil says 6 years. We have around 8 people, so I expect at least 5 responses. 3 years, Kamlesh says 3 years. Okay, I'll tell you the reason why I'm asking this. Okay, Gaurav is fresher. Okay, couple of more, one or two. It's okay, whatever may be the experience. I'm not going to judge you or anything. I'm just going to make the session a little more useful to everyone. So that's why I'm asking.
About 4 5 years.
Okay, great. Prathamesh says about 4 5 years. Okay, so I assume that it's a mixed batch. There are people with 5 6 years, and there are people with probably getting into an industry and trying to uh, put themselves into this data science sphere. Okay, by the way, I was not asking data science experience. I was asking the industry experience in whichever companies you were working. Great. So that gives me a little bit of understanding. So, see, people who have already worked in organizations before getting into the learnings which data science gives, they already know the dynamics that exist, right, between people, the kind of projects a company do, at least in their own domain they are part of, and they also know a little bit of navigation, right? How do we get something done, get things done in an organization? What I will focus today is a little bit nuanced understanding of what special things you need when you are working in a data science team, right? And depending on your role, probably you will see little bit differences. So what I'm going to tell you today is going to be little generic in nature, but will help you put a framework around getting the best job out of your assigned responsibilities. Okay, and also at the same time kind of help you to grow better and in a structured approach, rather than saying, okay, I've entered data into data science now and I keep switching the job to get a higher and higher salaries, which I know is one of the objectives as well for all of you. But let's talk about it in terms of why that cannot be the that cannot be a good goal in terms of getting yourself as an accomplished professional in this data science field. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well, and then I will give probably I'll try to keep at least 15 to 20 minutes for questions, and I can take it up if you have anything in specific. All right, so let's get started. Let me try to share my screen. Can anyone very quickly confirm if they are able to see my screen? Just a yes should do.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So I like the topic settling in, right? Let's talk about what settling in means. So before we go there, very quickly, I am Karthik Ramasubramanian. Currently, I am a senior product manager. Now, I'll sort of define my role also probably at the end with Club Mahindra, which is one of the group companies of Mahindra Group. Prior to this, I was with Mahindra and Mahindra Group Strategy Office, and from there got a transition within the group, Club Mahindra being one of the companies. And prior to that, worked with companies like Snapdeal, Hike Messenger, and Reckitt Benckiser, right? And during this 9 years of industry experience, also got an opportunity to write 4 books, all related to machine learning. Yeah, before to getting into industry, I used to write poems, but nobody published it, unfortunately. Okay. More about me, you can read in my LinkedIn profile, and you will see the kind of projects I have done. I'll also talk about why is there a little bit of a difference in my role, right? You see, it's senior product manager. I'm not calling myself a data scientist or a senior data scientist or a lead data scientist. No, right? We'll talk about that maybe towards the end. Okay, so this is the first uh, thought that I wanted to share with you. And now I can fairly talk about these two types of organizations, right? Because Snapdeal, Hike Messenger, when I was there, it was still growing up, and maybe they are still at the same position. Little bit here and there, the companies are in a very different state today. But back then, it obviously it's a very high growth startups. When I was part of the data science team in Snapdeal, I was probably in the first 5 employees of the data science team when I started, right? So I can fairly talk about startups, and also somebody has to mute themselves. I think it is Sundar. Okay. And with startup, and also with companies like Reckitt Benckiser, and which is one of the world's leading FMCG firms, fast-moving consumer goods, and also companies like Mahindra and Mahindra, which is an Indian conglomerate. There are very stark differences in the work culture to everything that we can talk about companies, right, between these two sets. And it is important for you to be able to make a choice or make a decision. Sometimes it is not your decision, sometimes it is what you are being selected for, right? You go get a startup company, and you make a career out from there, or you get into an established firm and grow accordingly from there. But just to talk about first, what is that real difference between the two? So we can probably identify, we will do it quite often now from here on, identify what we can call as tenants, right, or characteristics. We'll talk about a lot of other characteristics as well in the context of what I will explain. Now, in the context of the type of organization, we can talk about how long an induction kind of a structure is put in place, right? Induction, as you probably might be aware, those who are experienced, is the organization's way of saying, I will let you settle in, okay, in the organization, and I'll explain what my business does. That's the way organizations create their induction programs. Some of the induction programs for freshers are quite extensive. Companies like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgans also have international exposure. So they kind of send their freshers 6 months in their headquarters in US, and kind of walk them through the business, right? Even that happens. There obviously is a good difference between an established organization and startup. Startups do normally don't kind of arrange, let's say, a 1 week or 2 weeks induction program. They just tell you that this is the problem you have. Start with the problem. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. So that's how they kind of plan it. So which means that it's on the go. You just learn as you do more things. Then we can talk about people. And I'll also tell you why all these things are important, and the decisions that you will take will depend on this. In terms of people, obviously in startups there are a lot of young and aspiring individuals on top of the leaders who probably have an established background in the industry, right? So probably I will work for 10 years, 20 years, and then start my own company. And as a young and aspiring individual, you can always work with them also, which is in a bigger organization highly impossible. If I am, let's say, 10 years experience and a vice president in a function or senior vice president of a function, it's very hard for a young and young professional to get in touch with, let's say, me and then talk on a daily basis. But in startup, that's quite possible. But most of the folks that you work with are younger and are still learning. Okay. Whereas as I said, in a established organizations, people are from varied culture, background, gender, with varied experiences. So which helps in one way to say that your organization is run by a very diverse group of people, and that also brings in learning for you as well. But you have to be at the right place to be able to get the learning from all of them. And then comes the most important part, particularly if you're working in a data science team, is the systems. In an established organization, as I have seen, the systems are not. I'll talk about what systems means. It's actually the applications, the various what you call the infrastructure that the company has. And most often, because these established firms are spread across the geography, right? Some of these companies. So I was talking about Reckitt Benckiser, which was my first company. There we had a global presence, almost 150 plus countries where Reckitt products were sold. Now probably it is increased, right? So with that kind of a geographical reach, you will definitely expect there should be redundancies in the kind of system we use. And also, these systems are not fairly like arranged in an array. It's a web of systems, and to be able to navigate and understand what these systems are kind of going to take you time. And the same thing can be applied, it can be talked about in terms of your processes as well. Even getting a gate pass is a 5-step process, let's say in an established firm. Probably in your startups, you can just walk in and then say, okay, hi, I would like to work in your company. Would you like to hear out my projects, right? It can be at that level also. But the point I want to make with processes is how much scope you have. I remember my days in Reckitt when I used to. So my background is in mathematics and computer science, and I was quite in even in post graduation. I was already doing machine learning projects, right? But in a different domain. So when I entered my first company, which is obviously an established firm, there was little leeway given, right, for experimentation. These things are very well structured. If I have to convince my bosses, let's do some new machine learning project. And by the way, I'm talking about the year 2012, 2013. By then, data science was not a term, and it was just maybe coming up in US and other countries, but not in India for sure. So their convincing bosses was a difficult job, though they were open to your suggestions, but it takes a lot to tell them, okay, this is what I want to do. Am I allowed to do or not? But obviously, in startups, you are always looking for something new. Otherwise, you won't be able to differentiate yourself, isn't it? And your success depends on those experimentations. So that's what I mean by process. Perks, risk, you probably understand that very well by now, right? How much money I can earn and what's the kind of risk it involves. So when I say always on the toes, probably that's not a risk for you. You probably like that way of working, right? But that might also involve the uncertainty which kind of has you have in the job, right? Because you are always striving to do something, but that effort may not translate into results for the company and for you, obviously because of the scope in which the startup companies are working in. They are trying to get the market share. They are trying to get new clients, new customers. So your efforts are still just very nascent. It's still not proven to have any great impact. So there is obviously a risk that whether the company will succeed or not succeed. So you will keep moving from one task to the another. There will you will not be able to spend, let's say, years in one project. That's not a and I'm again saying this all in a very generic term. It might change from one company to the other, and depending on the leader that is leading that startup as well. Yeah, in the established firm, I say the risk is not much, but you will obviously see that nowadays even established firms are very dynamic in nature. They are getting agile. They know that there are good startups who can challenge them, and overnight things can change, right? And we have seen many examples in the past where complacency in established firms have led them to what you call bad results. So the sit and relax mode is probably you will see often, but as I used to joke, normally if in big organizations you are not alert during your appraisal time, right? It may happen that you have nothing to speak about the project. So they at least wake up 6 months before your appraisal starts. But anyway, jokes apart, the risks involved in a large organizations are less. Obviously, you are not taking great amount of uncertainty with you when you are taking up a job in established firms. But at the same time, the opportunities in startups obviously are far higher than in established firm, and scope for experimentation as well. Which we also have discussed in terms of how much exposure then you will get. If you are the sole person in a team of 5 or 6 people doing something right in a startup organization, then obviously you are adding great value to the project and as well as to the team. So the organization sees you as the owner. You are kind of delivering the project. It's not your team leader or not your super boss. You are the owner of that project and you know what needs to be done. But in established firms, typically you kind of are part of a very, very small part of a large project because your teams sizes are like 10, 50, or in hundreds. Okay. So now why I was kind of putting these characteristics is for you to know or you to kind of understand uh, at which life stage I am. Obviously, the decision between the which organization you want to strive for. Obviously, it's not that uh, you can always plan. It's not that I am not getting a job and that's why I sort of think I should go to a startup, right? But you can always set goals for yourself. You can say I want to be in an established firm, or I want to be in a startup for some reason XYZ. So what are those reasons for you? I may say I'm looking for, let's say, larger perks, right? And I am willing to take risks. Someone might say I want more exposure, right? Or someone might say I am fine with little bit less exposure, but I would like to have low risk. And someone might say it's interesting how I can work with various people from different backgrounds. So what is your reason? And then set your goal, right? What I want to do. Sometimes you can also say I would like to be in a startup, let's say, for first 5 years of my career. That is fine if you are a fresher. But then after 5 years I would like to get into an established firm after my learnings and after I probably have a good enough experience. Or it can happen the other way around as well. I get set myself into an established organization and then I get bored and I then want to jump into a startup, right? Now you can get bored or you can say I want more challenges. It's your way of putting things up, right? So I want more challenges is what the decision that I took back then, right? Moving from Reckitt to Snapdeal was a very, very big difference in terms of the organization. But I made that decision to say I want to challenge myself. Okay. Uh, After I complete this one, maybe I'll take a break. And if you have any questions, I will take it up. I'll just complete this one. Okay. Now let's forget about whether you are in a startup organization or into an established firm. now now we have landed into a data science job, and obvious I am sure that by now you know what kind of job profiles you can target, right? You can become a data engineer, data analyst, data scientist, a person who can, let's say, be an expert of data visualization. So there are a lot of roles coming out today. I will talk about the product role a little later. But if you are, let's say, targeting data engineer, data scientist, or let's say an analyst, which is an entry level profile, some things have to be understood, right? And some things you have to follow for you to be able to be successful in that data science team. First of all, you need to get a great start when you are hired, and then sustain that start to deliver for the organization and to deliver for yourself the results that you expect, right? So what is that you need? First of all, I see young generation as well as experience uh, don't put a lot of effort on something that I call something that we know that is important, like being very very curious about the organization and as well as the problem that you are working. Often we don't ask enough questions. My boss comes to me, I am hired, let's say, in a new organization. My boss comes to me and says, okay, this is the problem you should work in. I blindly start, right? Just putting down everything that my boss told, start to gather the data, build these fancy models or the visualizations without asking the right questions. Why am I doing this project, right? What will be the end outcome of this project? When do you expect me to complete this? And how will this benefit the organization or, let's say, me? Right? Some of these questions are important for a simple reason. If you don't ask them, then you are following somebody's direction without knowing what you will learn out of that entire project, right? Once it is done, and how the business will benefit out of it. But if you start to be curious and ask these questions very well ahead of time, when you are done with the project, you know exactly what you have accomplished for you and for yourself, for you and for the organization. Otherwise, you keep talking about, I've done a project, let's say, in sentiment analysis, or and this is what I hear in interviews when I listen to candidates. They talk about projects, they talk about the models they have built, but they don't talk about what is that this project really did for themselves and for the organization. So if you miss this element of your personality, sometimes you are shy, sometimes you are little what you call reserved, but that doesn't stop you to ask questions. You can be reserved, you can be shy, you don't have to be very vocal, but asking one liner question is a must. Now it doesn't matter whom you are talking to. You can ask questions curiously to gather information from your teammates, from the business folks you work with, but you need to be very sharp, very clear when you start the project. Why am I doing this? What is this project about? When I have to complete, uh, how my business will benefit out of it, right? And the second part of your skill set, these are all kind of, you can imagine, bit of soft skill as well. Openness is important. I'll put a little bit of a context to that. The term is very generic, openness, right? It's not that I am going to open up my personal life and share everything with my colleagues or my bosses, right? The objective is not that. The openness that I am talking about here is in terms of my learning objectives. Often you do something without liking, without sort of really connecting with it. First of all, if you don't have curiosity, then you will say that I will accept whatever is being given to me. And then if you, let's say, are curious, you understood everything, and you are not open, right, in sharing your objectives or being transparent about what you know and what you don't know, then you probably are also misleading the team as well as yourself. I'm not an expert of everything when I start my the journey in the organization, isn't it? You know some things, you don't know something, so you have to set very clear expectation. I accept this new project and I accept the challenge. But let me tell you that some parts of this I need to learn. I have not done it before. So you set that expectation right, and you say that if an experienced folk takes 2 months to get this done, I will take 3 months, but I will get it done. The final goal is same. And also with your colleagues, when you share your learnings, right? You can talk about this in two levels, to your boss and to your colleague. When you share your experience and learnings with your colleague, they also share their own. You create a culture where you are open to sharing ideas, and when you are stuck, they are the ones who will help you, right? And the third part is about if you are curious, if you are open, then this diversification will happen automatically. But what I mean by diversification here is when you are working in a project, you should strive for more projects which are of different nature. So if my first problem statement was to work with the HR function, or let's imagine sales function, I would like to get myself little bit more exposure into marketing as well. What kind of problems the marketing team would be interested to solve? Obviously, we are talking about data science here, right? And more you understand in within one industry, better you become, and you can kind of call out in the public that I've worked in, let's say, travel business for some 5 years, and I have worked in some 10 to 15 different problems. So that is important. You have to always seek that. You probably might not get, and that's how the differences really come up, right, between an established and an startup organization. In a startup organization, you move from one to the other very quickly. In an established firm, you will stick to one project, but because the systems are complex, because there are a lot of details that you need to cover, it obviously takes a little more time. But the fulfillment that you get out of completing one big project in a large organization and the kind of impact it creates is great, right? Obviously, in startups, you get that instant gratification. You do it right now, you feel happy, you move on to something without seeing how that finally got utilized, right, in the organization. In large organization, they don't leave you for instant gratification. They leave you for the long term satisfaction of your project. That's what everybody in an established organization strive for. So they don't sort of appreciate that you have done something in 3 months. They appreciate that you have carried on the task end to end, and you now own that after it's completed as well. And if there are any issues, there are any bugs, you have to own it and you have to fix it. And that's how then the project becomes better and better day by day. All right. So the other 2 points is about finding help. Mentor and buddy, I call it. And it's important to have one mentor and at least one buddy in an organization, whichever company you are going to be part of. Why? Buddy, obviously, it's not very difficult to understand. You need a best friend as you have in your life, probably in schools and colleges, right? And maybe in your own family as well. Maybe your own brothers and sisters are good friends with whom you can share the good moments and the bad moments, and they provide you support. It's as simple as that. You need a little bit fun also in the organization when you are part of it. Otherwise, it becomes a mechanical life, isn't it? But why mentor is important? A guru or a mentor in organization will help you pull up or show you the path when you are lost, right? And I've been extremely lucky in whichever organization I've been part of so far. I've always found my mentor on day one, probably in form of my boss or in form of my super boss, who used to guide me exactly what are the kind of challenges I will face. They will guide me in terms of the business understanding, and they will also tell me what things you should do and what you should not. And if you have one such mentor, your life is little sorted, right, in terms of working in that organization. And sometimes it's not very explicit that you can find a mentor directly. And don't confuse yourself when I say mentor as your boss. It may not be your boss. Probably you may not like your boss at all. That can also happen, isn't it? but you have to find a mentor who is more experienced, mature, little calm, is ready to listen to you, and that you have to seek through your HR function or through your own interaction. Somehow you have to find out your guru. And the last part is also about people. The first three is about you. The next three, the curiosity, openness, and diversity, is about you. What you do, how you do. The mentor, buddy, and stakeholders are about the people you work with. So stakeholders, in my opinion, are the most important part of your project, of your project success or failure. You may appreciate that when you work with a business function, you are working on a project. Let's imagine for marketing team, and in marketing team you will have a business head, right? And with that business head, you will have many function leaders. Someone might be looking at imagine new campaigns. Some other people will might look at vendor relationship and so on. There are many other function leads also in within a head. So when you have a good rapport with so this is sorry for the typo there. I mean good rapport with the teams, right, and the leads and the function head. What you really establish out of that relationship is a really good flow of information first. That is number one. Second, you really are buying in your stakeholders by selling your ideas. If you have a good idea to do with the data that they have got, you probably want also somebody to back you up, isn't it? Somebody has to sort of really say that, okay, I am with you, go ahead and do it. You need one such person. And if you have a good relationship with the stakeholders in the business or that particular function, the path is little less resistance than let's say if you don't maintain any relationship at all. You just may kind of see them as their office colleagues or something. Then it's going to be a little tougher. You have to make some good friends to be able to for you to be able to get some support while you are navigating your path towards the end outcome of the project. Okay, I will stop now for few moments before I can proceed further for any questions. No questions? Okay, I think there is one question from Prasad. What sort of projects are required during interview? Okay, so uh, during interviews, I'm sure that Grey Atom would have also designed some projects while you were part of the curriculum. So have a good command over those projects that you did. But there is no predefined kind of rule set, or we don't have any predefined set of projects that you can talk about in any given organization. First of all, you have to understand what type of organization you are going for the interview, right? See if your projects are relevant for that organization or not. But even if it is not relevant, if you are, let's say, you have worked on a project which is very suitable for a financial services company, but now you are applying for a healthcare company. So the healthcare company might not be that interested in your project, but they may still be able to connect because data science is common. The algorithms that I use are common, isn't it? The approaches I follow is common. So I don't really have to convince the hiring manager in the healthcare industry that I have done something in financial services domain, and it's useful for you or not. I still know that you have done something in data science and you can still contribute in the healthcare domain as well. But when they hire for experienced people, they normally look for some domain knowledge as well. So if I am, let's say, 7 years experience, then I want to get into a senior data scientist role, then they also expect that you have worked in the healthcare for at least couple of years and you have done some projects. But if you are a fresher, hiring managers do consider uh, the candidate with open mind. Did I answer your question?
Uh, Hi Karthik, I have one question.
Sorry, who is this? I can't
This is
see.
Prathamesh.
Yeah, tell me, Prathamesh.
Yeah. So what kind of role should we expect in, I mean, irrespective of the industry, what kind of a role should we expect and what kind of a tasks that would come at our hand should we expect when we join? Because we are still freshers in this domain.
Sure.
So that way, if you can suggest something on that.
Yeah. So see, largely this entire domain, as I see it, is still evolving, and people have given it a lot of terms. Some roles are called analyst, simply analyst. Some roles are called data analyst. Some people have designed it like data engineers, data scientists, so on and so forth, right? But what is important to understand is first, how do I get an entry? And from there, how do I become what I want to become? So, first of all, if one is not clear why I took up data science in the first place, what is my core strength and capabilities, then it is going to be a little difficult because you are then not navigating your own career. You are sort of following somebody else's guidance or somebody else's directions. So let's imagine if I say that I am a mathematics and computer science person, right? As in background as my studies. So I am decent. Recently, I can understand a little bit of good maths and computer science as well to a large extent. So I would like myself to be in more in a data scientist sort of a profile where I'm building models, I'm solving business problems, and end of the day, I am going to build something which is more like a statistical or a machine learning output by building these cool models. But if you say that I'm probably a person who is very good in understanding business context. I can very well understand, like logically think and connect with various uh, aspects of the business. Uh, Probably you can also start in a role which is an analyst profile, right? A lot of people who even want to be data scientists first start with analyst profile because their experiences are yet not they are not yet experienced in the domain that they are going to get into. So the data analyst role is a very clean sheet. You can either become, let's say, a data scientist over a period of time. You can become a person who can be very good at data visualization, or you could become also a data engineer from where you start. But the primary difference between data engineer and a data scientist is in terms of what kind of activities you are doing. So when I said data scientist, you were building these models, right? Machine learning, statistical models. A data engineer's responsibility is to make sure they are supporting the data scientist folks or also the analyst folks who would like to come out with some insights or build certain models. When I say support, in any organization, the data sources are diverse. You will get one data from very clean and neat databases, like in form of rows and column tables. Some data would be in text, for example, customer feedback. If they give you customers give you feedback and they write it in their own language or English or any other language, right? So how do you process it and make sense of it? Sometimes you are dealing with audio files. If you are a customer facing B2C company, you have all your call center logs. So the recordings are audio files. So how do I decode from audio files and come out with some use cases around that? So the data might be of diverse nature. But one person cannot handle all these data sources and at the same time build some cool mathematical or statistical or let's say machine learning models. So a data engineer really facilitates that. Every single thing that you see is a data, but how do I convert that data into numbers? That's where the real thing starts. That's where the models and machine learning algorithms that you work with really works. Okay, so Prathamesh is saying, suppose there is someone like him who uh, is from a physics background. Okay, that's interesting. Physics background, videography, business management, and data science that I've started. Then in this case, I should drop a few things and focus on specific combo, explain all the backgrounds. Okay, so see, Prathamesh, one thing that I will tell you, when you have a mathematics and computer science background, you are directly able to relate to what you are going to do in data science, because all these algorithms have somewhere
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit of maths, and codings will obviously involve computer science. But when you are from, let's say, physics background, then you have to just see the transition, how it will happen. Probably your background will not help you, right? Being very good in physics might not help you, but maybe having a good understanding of business will help you. And after learning data science, if you are able to relate to what you have learned in your physics, that's nothing like that, right?
yeah.
Even I was
Agree.
reading background materials around how people in data science have modeled data to prove some of the laws of physics, right? Without really knowing the law. Let's say if you don't know the law, and you have some data collected from series of experimentation, can I use some models to really come out and say that yes, that law is correct? So there are a lot of people who connect domains as well, but ultimately it depends on what is your end objective. If I'm a researcher, I will probably, I'm good in my background is physics. I now want to understand what this data science world has for me. Particularly if you look at the astronomy as a field, right? All these things that people are finding, the galaxies and all these distant planets that a lot of people are trying to find, a lot of time that involves humongous amount of data mining. And I'm talking, I don't know in zettabytes or petabytes, but that involves a humongous amount of data mining, and some of the skills you will learn in data science also are used there. But being there means that you are moving more towards that R&D sort of a phase. But being in business, things are much simpler. There is very less opportunity. Even if I am from maths and computer science, I don't apply maths and computer science calculus or linear algebra or graph theory on a daily basis. I probably might be doing one simple business problem solution, which was very logical in approach, but not anywhere related to data science application. But it's still data driven, right? So that's why I'm saying, when you are getting into a new organization, the answers are not very simple that I'm from physics and I can get into this, or I'm from chemistry, I can get into this. All you have to focus on is you learned data science, so that is your core strength now. Connect with the business that you are part of, see if you can find out some good problems in that business. If you can solve that even before you start your career, well and good. But even if not, getting into a data analyst position helps you to first settle you down into one organization where you see all the data sources, and some of the data problems will also start to come. So I was blank when I started my journey, right? Then slowly, one project after the other, I started to understand what I really want to be. Now, if you ask me the same question, I say that I've diversified my portfolio. If you look at my organizations, I started with FMCG firm, right? There I was part of more database systems where I was more technically involved in identifying optimizations and queries and things like that. Then when I went into Snapdeal, it was an e-commerce company. With an e-commerce company, the data sources are very different. The problems are very different. Some of the problems you might already have heard and known. Then I went to Hike Messenger. Hike Messenger is a technology company. There, the type of problems were very different. But what remained with me all throughout this journey is my set of 10, 15 machine learning algorithms, let's say. That has not changed in 100 years. And my set of understanding of how to work with any new data, how to work with any new problem. That is what I have learned. The rest is going to be very common. What you guys have learned is something you can apply anywhere, no matter which domain you go into. But the only differentiation that I want to leave you with is, if you are in a data engineer profile, there is a heavy lifting of programming. You have to work with all these big data tools, like how to get the data ingested, processed, and then transformed into something which can be usable for analysis or for building models. But if you're in a data scientist role or an analyst role, most of the time you are working on new problems which the business is going to pose to you, or you identify yourself. So that you can imagine as two major different roles that you can play some part of. So some people are from technology background as such. Some of you might also be from a software development background. So that software development background really helps you to get into technology very quickly. And big data tools like Spark, Hadoop, everything is technology. It doesn't have to do much with data science, right? And you quickly get into this data engineer role. Hope yeah, I kind of was able to address some part of your question, if not everything.
Yeah. Got a lot of it.
Okay, I'll take two more questions and then I'll continue the last few slides where I'm going to talk more about my experience only. So that's why I stopped and asked questions. Okay, so Shruti has one. I'm keen in working and exploring process before we start with ML, like data cleaning and visualization. All right. Can I do my transition as data analyst for a year and later move into ML working? I want to make sure my basics are strong before getting into ML work. Shruti, first of all, it's not true that a data analyst is not building models. It's not about data analyst only looking at data and coming out with some number crunching and all that. That's not the job. Even a data analyst can build models. Maybe the primary role is not that. The primary expectation is not that. But if you are in an organization, there is no hard boundaries that you cannot build models. You can naturally go to there. But what a data analyst is very good at is a mind of a journalist, right? When I am probing a case or any new news, a journalist looks at a data source or any piece of information very keenly. If you have seen some good movies around how good journalists really figure out any scam or something, they validate their sources multiple times, right? They identify, they assign their sources a credibility score. And when they put everything together, they need a connecting string. If that connecting string is not coming in, and even if the one logic is not striking, then somewhere you are not convinced that the story is correct or not. So it probably is half baked, right? That is where a data analyst role comes in. A data scientist is very simple, right? You can simply get me the data. I will fit my model and give you some output, and I keep improving it by whatever techniques I know. So that's the only difference I see. But never is the case that a data analyst cannot build a machine learning model. It's very simple nowadays because you have Python, you have so many libraries with you, which is very powerful in today's context. You can very quickly prepare the data and fit the model. Now you may need a little more help mathematically to say how I do parameter fine tuning, right? Or how do I bring in more features for which I need to talk to my business and keep improving the model so that finally when I'm deploying it, it is useful. So yeah, so in one way you can very easily transition from data analyst role into, let's say, a data scientist role. But there is no hard lines between the two, like I just want to say. And yes, it is very important when you start, you have to know everything in and out. The workings of data analyst or whether it is building models, you should have an exposure and understanding of how to do it. You cannot simply say I am good at data cleaning and data visualization, but I don't know how models are built. You have to have some understanding how the models are built. So this is what everybody is looking at. Because you are new, because you don't have much exposure, I'm putting you into data analyst role. Not because you know data cleaning and visualization, but not machine learning. I would still expect you to know machine learning a little bit, if not like an expert, but at least like a beginner. So again, I would like to emphasize basics are important for all these roles. Even if I'm the data engineer, I would at least know what my models really do. I know how my data are being cleaned, right? All that process needs to be clear, no matter which role you are going into. Did I answer your question, Shruti? Okay. So last question before I move further. Prasad has a question here. So Prasad is asking if I have a mathematics background and some domain knowledge, but not any specific certification to prove it, how should we still present it? For example, I have good understanding in financial market, businesses, economics, but based on my personal study. Right. So, see, I was talking about this objective, right? The goal, Prasad, right? What is my end goal? You have a good, if let's say you have a good mathematics background, then you will understand most of the workings of these machine learning models, and it will not go beyond calculus, simple calculus, which you probably would have learned in your uh, plus 2, right? 12 standard, and some little bit of linear algebra, right? Most of the time you will be able to understand even how the workings happen, how really machine learning algorithms really happen. But what you probably have, which is your strength, I should say, is the domain knowledge. Being good in math programming will not help you much in the organization if you are also not building your capabilities and understanding businesses very well. So that's why I was saying being very curious is important. If I don't understand how e-commerce work, then I even can't think of any problems. I can't even think of solving any good machine learning problem, right? I keep on will thinking that building this model will be good for the business, but probably business needs 2 steps more than that model. Those 2 steps are not probably machine learning steps. Those 2 steps are somewhere in between the process the business follows, right? So normally hiring managers don't look at certification as the only proof. They also hear you out, and when you speak about something, obviously that will lead to more probing. If you talk about a project, I will ask 10 more questions on the project to really authenticate or really verify that you have done that project yourself. But even if you show, and sometimes it may also happen, you will show me a certificate and I will not even look at that certificate, right? So there is no certificate that can prove your skills. It's only you who can able to explain well what you have done, whether that is in financial markets or in businesses or in economics. uh, if you have that good understanding of that domain, and if you have done some data science projects in there, that's your talking point while you are sitting for the interview. And even if you have one such good project, you can at least spend 30 minutes easily in the interview. Some companies also conduct separate coding rounds. So for that, you probably have to prepare separately. And some companies don't conduct coding round as such on a live system or something, but they give you some open problem to solve. And they give you maybe, let's say, 4 days, 5 days. You can work on that problem and come back with a solution. If the solution is really good, the second round is set up. So depending on which company you're applying for, there are different rules. Yes. So any domain, if you have a good project, it will be helpful. And even if you have not finalized your domain, it might happen that as a fresher or maybe a couple of years experience, you are not an expert of any domain. You are not an expert of finance or not an expert of healthcare. So any project that can help you to explain and buy that 30 minutes of the interviewer's time. So 30 minutes the interviewer is engaged, the better are your chances. If the interviewer is like thinking what projects you have done, I don't see any value, then you lost that person. So I would say don't think of the domain too much if you are new or a couple of years experience, but think of the problem you have solved. That is going to be important. All right. So I'll take a couple of more questions. by after under 10 minutes. I just have a couple of other slides. Okay, so this probably a lot of you might know by now that when you are working with data, it's important you understand a lot of facets of what kind of data you're working with, right? I'll talk about so the volume, velocity, variety, quality needs to be there. There has to be a metadata, right? All of this is a knowledge that you already know. But often what we miss out when we are going for a new organization is these three things, right? Who owns that data? What application the data is generated from? And what category can I put the data into, right? Then you probably understand volume, velocity, variety, quality is there or not, whether there is a metadata. But whenever you would like to understand the data in any given organization, you have to sort of see one by one whether you know the owner of this data, whether you know which application this data was generated, whether this data is a transactional data or a feedback or a customer info or a marketing data or the lead data. Lead is when you get the prospects, right, from different sources and convert them into customers. So lead data is also important. Then you understand the volume, what kind of volume you are dealing with. So accordingly, you will decide what system to use for. Maybe in Python alone, you cannot process, let's imagine 1 trillion records, or maybe 1 million records or 10 million records. So you need little bit of systems. You will then ask, obviously, do we have a Spark system here or a EMR in cloud, right? So those kind of questions will obviously emerge. Then we should also understand the velocity, what kind of velocity we are seeing here. If I'm talking about an e-commerce, then hundreds and thousands and millions of transactions are happening at a point at any given point in time. If I'm talking about, let's say, an IoT project where you are working for a manufacturing company and they have 100 systems, 100 machines, and from all these 100 machines there are maybe 10,000 sensors, and out of these 10,000 sensors you are getting, let's say, at any given minute, some 1 million records. So just imagine the kind of velocity you are dealing with. So you need systems which can handle that, like Kafka or any other queuing system which can help you process such amount of data and then do something about it. Then obviously variety also is important, whether you are dealing with tabular data or text or images or audios. And the most important, quality, whether you're dealing with a very clean and neat data or you're dealing with a messy, very like what you call unstructured and very error prone data, right, which you have to clean and process first before you are able to do something. And this is something which you don't, the dictionary part which I'm saying here is something that you don't find in many organizations. Most of the time you are navigating it yourself, and then you will create a metadata in your mind rather than having that metadata somewhere given to you. Some good organization maintain that. So data, metadata is data about data, what each column means, where is this data coming from, right? Is there anything that I have to consider specially for this processing this data, and so on and so forth. If there is any filter that I have to apply. So these kind of metadata are not very commonly available. This is passed on from one employee to the other employee, and you have to figure out if you know somebody who can give you that dictionary. And if you have that dictionary to start with, then nothing like that. So when you start in any organization, ask yourself on these broad headers whether you understand the data fully or not. And it will happen slowly. On day one, you may not get all these information, but as you grow one by one, you do more projects, you start to understand. But you have to understand this for you to be able to do your job better. Okay, so this will help you with that structure in mind. I'll take just one example here to give you a sense of what kind of things may change from depending on what type of data you're dealing with. So for example, if you're working with any CRM systems, right, the customer relationship management system. So what you will see there is a lot of PII information there. personally identifiable information. So this personally identifiable information in today's context is very tricky data to work with. For instance, you cannot have email IDs, you cannot have for mobile numbers, you cannot have the names. And let's imagine that you are working with the marketing team. Without knowing email ID and without knowing mobile phone, how will you send them any campaign? You receive hundreds of campaigns on your emails, isn't it? Somebody selling you something, Amazon selling you something, Snapdeal selling you something. All these are marketing campaigns, but there is a strong analysis, data analytics done behind the scene. So somebody down in the marketing team, like a data analyst or somebody, would have worked on the data to finally decide what kind of campaign should be sent. So there we now mostly work with identifiers, the primary keys which can identify the customer rather than the email IDs or the mobile phones. But it is important for you to know that some data are sensitive in nature and we should be very careful about dealing with it. Even sometimes when you work with pin code level information. So people have talked about this a lot. When you have a pin code, and if that pin code is less populous, right, pin code is not where the density is very high, it's possible that one can identify the individual by just knowing the pin code. Right? I'm not talking about any hypothetical case. This has happened in some of the places where even pin codes are considered as PII data. So what type of data you're working with is very important for you to know and safeguard you from any trouble, because you are going to do your job well within your own limits, right? Building models, doing analysis, but then you don't want to get into trouble because you missed out on one detail which was very important in terms of data privacy. And this field is still emerging, so I will not talk much about it, but yeah, this is a topic of its own. All right, so I hope with that, getting into data science and with this know your data, you probably have little bit of understanding, right? How do we get started in an organization? What you need to have. So very quickly summarizing, when we talked about the getting started into any data science team, we were talking about you being very curious, your openness, right, in sharing information and sharing about you and about the your projects. Then your diversification part, right, where you need to be exposed to as many number of projects as you can. And then we also talked about maintaining good relationship with people, finding your mentor, finding your buddy, having very good relationship with your stakeholders. So those things are important when you get started in any given data science team. It is true for any other job role as well, but in data science that is very important because this field is very nascent and you need everybody's support when you are moving in organization, because a lot of convincing needs to be done along the way. And then we talked about know your data, right? Pretty much something that all of you know, that all of these things is important in getting started with your project. But imagine this also as a framework in your mind, saying that when I start, basically I need to know what is the data that I am dealing with, right? What type of data I am dealing with, who owns the data. And as you mature, as you become better and better, you do more projects, you also get to know about the type of data you may be able to deal. The only point, the one other point that I want to talk about, when you get to know your data, when you know that there is a data available, for example, of images or audio files, customer interaction audio files, you at least know there is still a scope of a project which you have not touched. You probably are working on a tabular data right now, but you know that there exists an audio file of customer interactions as well. So can I do some sort of a real-time sentiment analysis when, let's say, one customer is calling me and the person is very angry, and if I understand a person is very angry, can the call center agent really change the script how to handle an angry person? Some of you can do that very well, but not everybody can. So you have to set up standard procedures for that. So there are a lot of use cases that you can generate in your mind at least, and you say that, okay, I am sorted for next 5 years. I have so many data sources here in this company. I will keep on working, and when I retire probably from this company, I would have run a bit, probably worked in all the projects which involves all the types of data. So that's how you can set your goals in your mind. So knowing your data is important. Okay. So the final part, there are just one more slide that I want to talk about. These are some of my own personal experiences, and some of you might very quickly relate to this if you've worked in industry for some 5-6 years. But these particular experience that I want to share with you helped me a lot in moving from one organization to the other, and also to shape my career. So if you see, when I was young and I was doing a lot of good projects, there used to be a time when I was flooded with too many projects. One moment I remember, I was writing books after the one very specific moment I would like to share. There is the book assignment that I took up involved my time after 6 or 7. One of my co-authors used to be based out of Dublin, and he and I used to switch, like my time zone ends, his time zone starts, and we used to do handshake. Okay, I've done this. Now you carry on with the next. My job was in the morning, right? Obviously, whatever 9 to, sometimes it stretches all the way to 8. Then I start after 8, and then interestingly, at that point in time. Uh, on my personal end, my marriage got fixed, right? So, you are managing different stakeholders at a given point in time. One is your author, sort of publisher, pushing you hard for the timelines. Your boss at office is kind of pushing you for the project completion. And obviously, your wife to be is expecting you to sort of talk and share things, right? So, at one point, you uh, will face the situation that you are taking a lot than what you can do. But my personal experience has taught me, when I was young, I was able to do that even if I took a lot, because the commitment levels on my personal sides were a little less, right? So I was able to juggle between the things. So when you are young, don't worry about this part. A lot of people say that don't take too much because you keep saying yes and you get in trouble and all that. But when you are young, you can still do that. And if you work with data, sampling is very important, right? Why sampling is very important? You cannot work with the entire 1 trillion or 1 petabyte of data. There is no system that can handle. It's very similar. So if you don't have a right sampling technique, then you don't really learn from the data. Likewise, in career also, you cannot say that I've worked in one project for my entire 60 years unless you are working on some breakthrough problems, right? Going to space is a moonshot kind of a problem, right? Or building, let's say, a driverless car is a moonshot kind of a problem. That can take a generation. But if in a data science business problem, you have to do a lot of sampling before you can really call yourself an expert. But as you get mature, then you have to learn where you have to say no and where you have to say yes. Why is that important? Saying no gives you focus, right? You have to focus on your personal life, you have to focus on your career, you have to focus on your other interest. So if you don't say no after you have, maybe let's say, gathered some 5-10 years of experience under your belt, you will again be in a trouble, and probably a lot of people who are dependent on you will also be in trouble. So that's why I say yes and no often. But when you are young, say yes often. When you are little old, little experienced, say no often, and then you can focus on something, one or two things, and do it to the best. Okay. The another thing that I want to warn you against: data science is at one point quite hot, and at the right now also a lot of opportunities exist. But please stay away from the hype, right? I'm not sure how many of you know Sophia, which is a humanoid robo, right? Saudi Arabia kind of gave citizenship to to that robo. I don't know, because Sophia was very good in stage, talking to people, responding to their queries. So maybe countries think that that can be a very good, what do you call, human being as such in making. But these things are good, amusing, and exciting stuff that this technology can help you with. But not all of us will work with Sophia. Not all of us will work with driverless car. So while these hypes are good to know, these are some interesting stuff. But make sure that what you want to accomplish in your particular career, when you enter into data science, you are solving meaningful. I'm not saying Sophia is not meaningful. I'm saying solve meaningful problems which business will relate to. 99% of the business will have problems which driverless car or maybe Sophia kind of robots problem might not have. They probably are very, very niche problems to work in. And if you are lucky and if you're talented, probably you will also work in that. But 99% of the cases, you are working on some simple and very commonsensical problem which a business is facing today. So stay away from those hypes. And this part is very important, and you will very soon realize showing impact. Business means business is a lesson that I've learned after many years. You might want to do some problem, but that might not be so useful for the business. And if you still are adamant about solving that problem, probably people will not appreciate much. Sometimes problems that you solve might involve just drawing one histogram. That's it. And your problem is solved. You never looked at that histogram. Your business never looked at that histogram. So they never understood what the problem was. And you came as a data analyst, you drew that histogram as your first project, and your project was done. You made your impact. Now, no matter how many big models you build, you will not be able to do that job any better. That histogram was in itself useful. So work on problems which are important for business. Don't try to hard fit anything. Machine learning models are not mandatory in every single problem you solve. If you understand that part, your most of the career is sorted. And maybe I'll talk about what I mean by when I say I'm a product guy, not a data scientist person. And obviously, staying up to date is sort of most important. This field is evolving. Softwares, and I sometimes say that it is evolving faster than how softwares used to evolve in, let's say, last 1 decade. Even and before, even after, even from the beginning of the software evolution, right? The IT sector booming when it started. From that time to this, the speed at which the softwares are evolving, data science is evolving even faster than that. The algorithms, the cloud infrastructure, the business problems that people are solving today, the products that are coming out of AI, ML solutions, and so on. So stay up to date, read a lot, follow some blogs, follow some news articles. Everywhere you see machine learning, you should start to read that. For everywhere you see even data, you should start to read that. And last and the final point, don't jump the boat quite often. I see this now as a tendency because there are good salaries and because there are hiring managers and HRs who are always hunting for people. You often get many calls. When you are an established person, your resume is floating somewhere in the web. Some HR, some organization, some hiring manager looks at your job profile. They immediately call you, and you are tempted. Right now, I am in 12 lakh CTC. I want to get into 22 lakh CTC within a year. While that goal is not bad to target, what a lot of people miss is you are kind of missing the continuity of being staying in one place. In my experience, at least 3 years it takes to have really good command in the industry you are going to be part of. At least 3 years, where you would have worked with at least 5 problems, and those 5 problems will help you understand the industry very well. And after that, if you feel somebody is giving you 20 lakh, 22 lakh, 25 lakhs, go ahead and switch the job. But stay decent amount. 1 year, 6 months, 2 years is probably not enough, in my opinion. You may have a different opinion, but yeah, decide for yourself. But jumping the boat, you will lose that discontinuity that you are having. The continuity of your learning, continuity of your flow, continuity of your experience, right? Continuity of you getting to become better domain expert, right? So those all things you should take care of. Just salary should not be the only concern. And one final point before I can take some questions. In data science, if you want to grow, because there is a lot of crowd, right? Because there is a lot of people offering different suggestions and guidance, one needs to establish their own brand before you can become any better, right? Otherwise, you will stay where you are for very long, and maybe you want to, after another 5 years, you will say blockchain is picking up. I want to go to blockchain, or some other technology is picking up. I want to go to that technology. None of the field die, by the way. Even in the jobs that you are currently part of, you can continue in that job for another 5-10 years for like with ease. But because data science is giving you better prospects, you are trying to jump, isn't it? So now, what is the guarantee that data science will stop one fine day and another will pick up? So that is where you need to build a brand so that you always stay relevant. So write good blogs about what you learn. Anything which is innovative, anything which is new to you might also be new to many others. So write about it. Post your code that you have created in Kaggle, in GitHub. Demo your work wherever possible. With even if you are talking to your colleagues, 2 or 3 people about your work, it's helpful, right? You are getting the confidence of converting your thought process into words, and those words then probably will help somebody else. And if you are very good, then host a webinar, free webinar, do some live demo sessions, post it in YouTube. And if you really have some good ideas while working on a problem, try to put that into a research paper, published in good conferences, go and speak to these researchers, you will be exposed. So I started as a researcher, and then after spending almost 3-4 years while I was doing my post-graduation, was able to publish 3 research papers, and then went into industry. And only because I was able to publish research papers of because of some of the novel projects that I and my colleagues and I and my batchmates did, I was able to confidently take the book project as well. Otherwise, from day one, I would have been hesitating. I can't write a book. Because I wrote research papers, I was confident I can also author a book, and I took that project. Right? So you need to build your brand. In sooner or later, you will very soon realize that building your brand also proportionally relates to you staying in the field for longer. Otherwise, you tend to jump quicker to maybe, let's say, some other technology. Okay. So with that, I am open to any discussion, or if you have any questions, we can do that, or any other thing that you would need for me to clarify a little bit more. Okay, let me see. There is some things that I can see. Okay, Varsha is asking for feedback. Do give the feedback. I'll take Prathamesh question here. Hybrid cloud, they use private data is kept at facility and rest is with partner cloud. Yeah.
No, at that time you were talking about CRM. So
yeah.
That's when I said.
There are a lot of.
I am planning to work into the CRM space. So that way.
Yeah, right. So that space is very interesting. So if you're talking about this data privacy, the private data, the public data, that field is emerging a lot. And with the new laws coming in, GDPR, we know already Europe is using it a lot. And the data protection law in India will also play a big role in shifting that goal. So if some of you are going to get into that field, it's also going to be interesting. I'm not being